The Empire had ruled the Andromeda sector for 12,000 years. Their warships were the most powerful in the known galaxy. Their technology was so advanced that other species could not even understand how it worked. Every planet in their territory paid tribute to the Emperor. Every species bowed before their might. They believed they were the masters of the universe, and no one had ever given them reason to think otherwise. High Commander stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was a tall creature with 4 eyes and silver-scaled skin that gleamed under the ship's cold lights. He had served the Empire for 300 years. He had conquered 17 worlds. He had never known fear, and he had never known defeat. The bridge was quiet that morning. Officers moved between their stations with practiced efficiency. Sensor technicians monitored the endless void of space. Weapons specialists kept the ship's massive cannons ready for any threat. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. Then the alarm sounded. Lieutenant, a young officer barely 50 years old, turned from his sensor console with wide eyes. His silver scales had gone pale, which was a sign of extreme distress among his kind. "Commander," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "we are detecting a vessel emerging from." Did not look concerned. Ships entered and exited all the time in this sector. It was probably a merchant vessel or a patrol craft returning from duty. "Identify it," he said calmly. His clawed fingers moved across his console. The ship's advanced computers began processing the incoming data. They compared the vessel's energy signature against every known ship design in the Imperial archives. The archives contained information on every spacefaring species in the galaxy. Every engine type, every hull configuration, every weapon system was recorded there. The computer found no match. "Commander," said, and now his voice was definitely trembling, "the vessel does not match any known design. The computer cannot identify it." Finally turned to look at the main. What he saw made his 4 eyes narrow with confusion. The ship emerging from was unlike anything he had ever seen. Ships were elegant and curved, designed to show the beauty and sophistication of their civilization. This vessel was the opposite. It was angular and blocky. Its hull was covered with sharp edges and flat surfaces. It looked brutal and primitive, like something a lesser species might build. But there was something about it that made uneasy. He could not explain what it was. The ship was small, perhaps 1/10 the size of his flagship. It should have been insignificant. Yet something about its design suggested danger. It looked like a weapon that had been given the shape of a ship. "Where did it come from?" demanded. Senior scientist stepped forward. She was old even by standards, with scales that had faded to a dull gray. She had spent her entire life studying the lesser species of the galaxy. "The trajectory suggests it originated from the Sol system," she said quietly. Felt something cold move through his blood. The Sol system. He knew that name. Every officer knew that name. It was a small star system on the very edge of the galaxy, so far from Imperial territory that it had never been considered worth conquering. Scouts had visited it centuries ago. They had found a single habitable planet orbiting the yellow sun. On that planet lived a primitive species that called themselves humans. The scouts had observed these humans for several months. They had watched them burn fossil fuels for energy. They had watched them fight wars against each other using chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They had watched them struggle to send simple rockets into orbit around their own planet. The official report had classified humans as a pre-civilization. The scouts had estimated it would take them at least another 1,000 years to develop interstellar travel. The Sol system had been marked as a low-priority target for future expansion, and then largely forgotten. That report had been written 300 years ago. "That is impossible," said. "Those creatures were primitives. They could not have developed technology so quickly." "And yet," replied, gesturing at there is their ship." The vessel had fully emerged from now. It hung in the void like a predator waiting to strike. could see strange markings on its hull, symbols in a language the computer could not translate. The largest marking appeared to be a name, painted in bold white letters against the dark gray metal. "Can we translate that?" he asked. Worked at her console for a moment. The language appears to be something called English. The marking says USS Horizon. What does USS mean? Unknown, perhaps a designation of some kind. Stared at the alien vessel. His instincts, honed by 3 centuries of warfare, were screaming at him that something was very wrong. This ship should not exist. These humans should still be fighting each other with primitive weapons on their little blue planet. They should not be here, in the heart of space, in a ship that his computers could not identify. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "I want all 47 vessels to move into attack formation around that ship. Power up all weapons and raise shields to maximum." The orders were relayed across the fleet. Massive warships began to move, surrounding the tiny human vessel like predators circling prey. Weapon systems that could crack planets came online. Shield generators created barriers of pure energy around each Imperial ship. The human vessel did not move. It simply hung there in space, as if it was not concerned by the massive fleet surrounding it. "They are not running," observed. "Perhaps their sensors are too primitive to understand the threat," another officer suggested, but was not so sure. There was something about that ship, something about the way it just sat there that reminded him of something. It took him a moment to realize what it was. It reminded him of himself, back when he was young. Back when he had faced his first real battle against a superior force. He had not run either. He had not run because he had known something his enemies did not. He had known that he was going to win. "Open a communication channel," commanded. "I want to speak with whoever is commanding that vessel." He needed to understand what he was dealing with. He needed to know how these primitives had crossed the galaxy. And most importantly, he needed to know why they did not seem afraid. The communication channel opened. The flickered, and High Commander found himself looking at something he had never expected to see. A human face. Captain Daniel had been in the Navy for 25 years. He had served on cargo ships, patrol vessels, and research stations. He had seen things that most humans would never believe, but nothing in his entire career had prepared him for this moment. He was looking at an alien. The creature on his was tall and covered in silver scales. It had 4 eyes, all of them fixed on him with an expression that might have been anger or might have been fear. It was hard to tell with a face so different from anything human. Was sitting in his command chair on the bridge of the USS Horizon. He was 52 years old, with short brown hair that had gone gray at the temples. He was from a small town in Nebraska, and he had joined the Navy because he wanted to see the stars. Now he was seeing something far stranger than stars. "Well," he said calmly, "this is not what I expected to find out here." His first officer, Commander Torres, stood beside him. She was a tall woman from Texas with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had served with for 8 years, and she had never seen him lose his composure. She was counting on that composure now, because the tactical display showed 47 alien warships surrounding them. "Captain," she said quietly, "those ships are powering weapons." "I can see that," replied. He took a sip from his coffee mug. It was a habit that annoyed some of his crew, but it helped him think. "Let us see what our new friends want." The alien on the screen spoke. Its voice was deep and resonant, filled with authority. The ship's translation system worked quickly to convert the alien language into English. "Unknown vessel," the alien said. "You have entered space without authorization. You will identify yourselves immediately and explain your presence here." Set down his coffee and straightened in his chair. This was the moment that would define humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. He needed to get it right. "Greetings," he said. "I am Captain Daniel of the United Earth vessel Horizon. We are an exploration ship from the planet Earth. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic contact with your people." There was a pause. Could see the alien conferring with others on its bridge. He used the moment to study the alien ships on his tactical display. They were large, much larger than the horizon. Their weapon systems were clearly visible, massive cannons and energy projectors that could probably destroy a small moon. In terms of raw firepower, the horizon was badly outmatched. But was not worried. He knew something that these aliens did not. The alien turned back to the screen. "I am High Commander of the Imperial Fleet. Your presence here is unexpected. Our records indicate that your species is primitive and incapable of interstellar travel." "Your records might be a bit out of date," said with a slight smile. Lieutenant Park, the navigation officer, leaned toward Commander Torres. He was a young man from California who had graduated top of his class at the Naval Academy. "Commander," he whispered, "I am reading some strange energy signatures from those ships. Their power output is very high." Torres nodded. "Keep monitoring. Let me know if anything changes." Was speaking again. "How did your species develop technology? Our projections indicated you would not achieve this capability for another 1,000 years." Shrugged, "We are fast learners." He could see that his casual attitude was confusing the alien commander. Had probably expected humans to be frightened, to beg for mercy, or to try to run. Instead, was sitting calmly in his chair, drinking coffee and making small talk. "Captain," Ensign Cole said from the communication station, "I am picking up a lot of chatter from the alien fleet. They seem to be very confused about our ship." "Good," said. "Confused is better than aggressive." But did not stay confused for long. The alien commander straightened to his full height and spoke with cold authority. "Captain, I will be direct with you. The Empire has ruled this sector for 12,000 years. We have conquered 100 worlds. No species has ever successfully resisted us. Your vessel is small and alone. My fleet could destroy you in seconds." Nodded slowly. "That is a very impressive resume, Commander." "Therefore," continued, "I am prepared to offer your species a choice. You may submit to imperial rule peacefully, surrender your technology, and accept your place as a tribute species. In exchange, we will not destroy your—" The bridge of the horizon went silent. Every officer turned to look at their captain. This was the moment of truth. Took another sip of his coffee. Then he set the mug down and leaned forward in his chair. "Commander," he said, "I appreciate the offer, I really do, but I am afraid I will have to decline." His four eyes widened. "You do not understand. This is not a negotiation. You have one ship, I have 47. You cannot possibly hope to resist." "You are absolutely right," said. "I have one ship, but I think you should take a closer look at my ship before you make any decisions you might regret." He turned to his chief engineer, Mitchell. Mitchell was a big man from Ohio who could fix anything with enough wire and determination. He had been waiting for this moment. "Chief," said, "show them what we brought." Mitchell grinned and pressed a sequence of buttons on his console. "With pleasure, Captain." Across the hull of the USS Horizon, panels began to slide open. Hidden weapon ports revealed themselves, dozens of them, each containing weapon systems that no alien race had ever seen. Shield generators activated, creating a barrier of energy around the ship that glowed with strange blue light. The ship's reactor, which had been running at minimum power, suddenly surged to full capacity. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, alarms began to scream. "Commander," Lieutenant shouted, "the human vessel is undergoing some kind of transformation. Energy readings are going off the scale." Stared at his tactical display with growing horror. The numbers he was seeing did not make sense. They could not be real. No ship that small could produce that much power. "That is impossible," he whispered. Senior scientist checked her instruments 3 times before she spoke. Her voice was hollow with disbelief. "Commander, That single human vessel is now outputting more power than our entire fleet combined. Look back at the human captain was still sitting there, still calm, still holding his coffee mug, but now there was something in his eyes that recognized. It was the look of a predator that had been pretending to be prey. "Now," Captain said, "shall we try this conversation again?" The bridge of the Eternal Dominion had descended into chaos. Officers shouted at each other as they tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Sensor technicians ran diagnostic after diagnostic, convinced that their equipment must be malfunctioning. Weapons specialists stared at their targeting computers with growing dread. High Commander stood in the center of it all, his four eyes fixed on where the human vessel hung in space like a sleeping beast that had just opened one eye. "How is this possible?" he demanded. Senior Scientist was bent over her console, her old scales trembling as she processed the data. "Commander, I have checked the readings 17 times. They are accurate. That ship is generating more power than anything we have ever encountered." "It is a trick," Lieutenant insisted. "They must be projecting false readings to confuse our sensors." "That is not possible," said. "Our sensors cannot be fooled in that way. The energy signatures are real. The weapons are real. That ship is real." Stared at the USS Horizon. The human vessel was still just sitting there, making no aggressive moves. Its newly revealed weapon ports were dark, its shields holding at a steady glow. It was not attacking, but the threat was clear. This was not the primitive species the Empire had dismissed 3 centuries ago. This was something else entirely. Captain's voice came through the communication channel. "Commander, I hope we can continue our discussion now. I believe we have a lot to talk about." Forced himself to respond calmly. "You have made your point, Captain. Your vessel is more capable than we expected, but you are still one ship against 47. Even with superior firepower, you cannot defeat an entire fleet." Nodded thoughtfully. "You are probably right about that. If we started fighting right now, your fleet would almost certainly destroy my ship eventually. But I want you to think very carefully about what would happen before that moment." "Are you threatening me?" "I am being honest with you," said. "My weapons can destroy a ship the size of yours in approximately 2 seconds. I count 47 vessels in your fleet. Even if every one of your ships fired on me at once, it would take at least 30 seconds for your weapons to bring down my shields. In that time, I could destroy perhaps 20 of your ships, maybe more." He paused to let the numbers sink in. "You would win, Commander, but you would lose almost half your fleet to do it. Is that a victory worth having?" Felt the weight of those numbers pressing down on him. 20 ships, thousands of lives. And for what? To destroy a single human vessel that had not actually attacked anyone. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Leaned back in his chair. "I want to talk. I want to learn about your people, and I want to tell you about mine. I want to find out if we can be friends or if we have to be enemies. Right now, we are neither. We are just 2 ships in space, pointing weapons at each other. That does not have to be our future." Commander Tor stepped forward on the Horizon's bridge. She had been studying the alien fleet carefully, analyzing their formation, their weapon placements, their communication patterns. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think he is actually considering it." "I know," replied, keeping his voice low. "The question is whether his pride will let him accept." On the Eternal Dominion, was having a similar conversation with his advisors. "This is an insult to the Empire," one officer declared. "These primitives dare to threaten us. We should destroy them now and deal with the losses." 20 ships is not acceptable losses," another countered. "That is almost half our fleet. The Emperor would have us executed for such failure." The elderly scientist spoke up. "May I offer a perspective, Commander?" Nodded. "Speak." 300 years ago, our scouts visited their planet. They were fighting wars with chemical explosives and had barely reached their own moon. Now they are here in our space with technology that surpasses our own. Do you understand what that means? They advance quickly, said. They advanced impossibly quickly, corrected. In 12,000 years, the Empire has made steady progress. We have improved our technology gradually, generation by generation. These humans have done in 3 centuries what took us. They are not just fast learners, Commander. They are something we have never encountered before. She gestured at the. That is one ship. One exploration vessel from a species that was using radio waves and internal combustion engines 300 years ago. What will they have in another 300 years? What will they have in 1,000? The question hung in the air like a sword. Understood what she was saying. Even if he destroyed the horizon today, even if he assembled every fleet in the Empire and attacked Earth directly, it might not be enough. If humans could advance this quickly, they might be able to defend themselves. They might be able to fight back. And if the Empire started a war with humanity, it might be a war they could not win. Commander, Lieutenant said nervously, the human captain is still waiting for a response. Closed his 4 eyes for a moment. He had spent 300 years serving the Empire. He had never retreated. He had never shown weakness. But he had also never been stupid. He opened his eyes and looked at the. Captain, he said slowly, I propose a temporary ceasefire while we discuss this situation further. Smiled. I think that is a very sensible idea, Commander. Perhaps we could meet in person. I would be honored to host you aboard my ship. Several officers gasped at the suggestion. No high commander had ever set foot on an alien vessel. It was beneath the dignity of the Empire. But was already thinking ahead. He needed to see this ship up close. He needed to understand how these humans had accomplished what should have been impossible, and he needed to decide whether the Empire should fight them or befriend them. I accept your invitation, he said. I will come aboard your vessel in 1 hour. Excellent, replied. I will have my people prepare some refreshments. Do your people drink coffee? Did not know what coffee was, but he was about to find out. As the communication channel closed, Commander Torres turned to her captain with raised eyebrows. That went better than I expected, she said. Picked up his coffee mug and took a long sip. The hard part is just beginning. Now we have to convince him that we are worth more as friends than enemies. And if we cannot, looked at the 47 alien warships surrounding his vessel. Each one was larger than the horizon. Each one was armed with weapons designed to destroy planets. Then we run, he said simply, and we come back with more ships. Shuttle from the Eternal Dominion docked with the USS Horizon exactly 1 hour later. High Commander stepped aboard with 2 guards, their scales gleaming under the human lighting that seemed too bright and too warm. Captain was waiting in the docking bay with Commander Torres and a small honor guard. He extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Welcome aboard, Commander. I hope your journey was comfortable. Stared at the offered hand for a moment before remembering the briefing his scientists had given him. The gesture was called a handshake, a primitive greeting ritual. He reached out and grasped his hand briefly. Your ship is smaller than I expected, said, looking around the docking bay. We believe in efficiency, replied. Please follow me. I have prepared a conference room where we can talk privately. As they walked through the corridors of the Horizon, observed everything with careful attention. The walls were simple metal, without the decorative carvings that adorned vessels. The crew members they passed wore identical uniforms and moved with quiet purpose. Everything was functional, practical, designed for a single purpose. War realized, this ship was designed for war. The conference room was equally simple. A long table with chairs on either side, a large on one wall and nothing else. No artwork, no status symbols, no displays of wealth or power. Gestured to a chair. Please sit. Can I offer you something to drink? We have water, tea, and coffee. What is coffee? smiled and poured a dark liquid from a metal container into a small white cup. It is a drink made from roasted beans. We humans have been drinking it for centuries. It helps us think. Accepted the cup cautiously. The liquid was warm and had a bitter smell that was not entirely unpleasant. He took a small sip and found the taste strange but tolerable. Now, said, sitting across from him, I think we should be honest with each other. You want to know how we developed our technology so quickly, and I want to know if the Empire is going to be our friend or our enemy. Set down the coffee cup. You are direct. I appreciate that. Very well. Explain to me how your species went from chemical rockets to drives in 300 years. Nodded, fair enough. The short answer is that we had no choice. He pressed a button on the table and the lit up with an image of Earth as seen from space. It was a blue and green sphere, beautiful and fragile. About 200 years ago, our scientists discovered an asteroid on a collision course with our planet. It was large enough to end all life on Earth. We had perhaps 50 years to find a solution. Listened intently. Asteroid impacts were a known danger, but most civilizations took thousands of years to develop the technology needed to deflect them. We tried everything, continued. Nuclear weapons, mass drivers, gravity tractors, nothing worked. The asteroid was too big, moving too fast. For a while, we thought we were going to die. But you survived, said. We got lucky. One of our scientists, a woman named Dr. Ward, discovered something we call quantum field manipulation. It allowed us to create energy fields that could move objects without touching them. We used it to push the asteroid off course just 3 months before impact. Changed the image on the screen. Now it showed a diagram of complex technology that could not fully understand. That discovery changed everything. Quantum field manipulation led to new power sources, new propulsion systems, new weapons. In 50 years, we went from a species that could barely reach our own moon to a species that could build ships like this one. Necessity drove your innovation, said slowly. Exactly, we had to evolve or die, so we evolved. Senior scientist had warned about this. She had called it survival pressure, the idea that species developed fastest when they faced extinction. The Empire had never faced such pressure. They had grown slowly because they had never needed to grow quickly. There is something else, said, something that might help you understand us better. He pressed another button and the screen filled with images. Wars. Thousands of years of human wars. Armies clashing with swords and spears. Bombs falling on cities. Soldiers fighting in trenches and jungles and deserts. We have been fighting each other since the beginning of our history, said quietly. We have created weapons to kill each other, and then we have created better weapons to protect ourselves from those weapons. It never stops. Generation after generation, we find new ways to destroy and new ways to survive. Watched the images with a mixture of fascination and horror. His own species had fought wars in their distant past, but they had been small conflicts, quickly resolved. The violence on the screen was something else entirely. It was constant, endless, a species at war with itself. You are saying that your entire civilization is built on conflict, said. I am saying that we are survivors, replied. No matter what happens, no matter how bad things get, we find a way to keep going. That asteroid should have killed us. It did not. Your fleet should have frightened us. It did not, because we have seen worse. We have done worse to each other. He looked directly into his 4 eyes. That is what you are dealing with, Commander. Not a primitive species that stumbled into space by accident. A species that has been fighting for survival since the day we learned to walk upright. We are very, very good at surviving. Was silent for a long moment. He was beginning to understand something important. The Empire had conquered 100 worlds because those worlds had been weaker. They had surrendered or been destroyed. That was the natural order of things. But humans would not surrender, and they might not be destroyed so easily. "What do you want from us?" finally asked. Leaned back in his chair. "We want peace. We want a trade, to share knowledge, to learn from each other. We have no interest in conquering your empire or taking your territory. Space is big enough for everyone. And if we refuse, if we insist on war—" His expression did not change, but something in his eyes went cold. "Then we will fight, and we will keep fighting until one of us is gone. That is what we do. That is who we are." Believed him. For the first time in 300 years, the High Commander of the Imperial Fleet believed that he might have finally met an enemy the Empire could not defeat. "I need to consult with my government," he said. "Of course," replied, "take all the time you need, we will be here." And that, realized, was exactly what he was afraid of. The message from the arrived 3 days later. High Commander read it in his private quarters aboard the Eternal Dominion, his 4 eyes scanning the official text with growing disbelief. The Emperor had made his decision. There would be no war with humanity. Instead, the Empire would pursue a diplomatic alliance with Earth, was ordered to remain in the sector as the official ambassador to this new species. It was unprecedented. In 12,000 years, the Empire had never formed an alliance with a lesser species. They had conquered, dominated, and absorbed. They had never treated anyone as equals. But the Emperor was old and wise. He had studied the reports, the sensor data, the recordings of Captain's calm face as he sat surrounded by 47 warships. He had reached the same conclusion that had reached in that conference room aboard the Horizon. Humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were a species to be understood. 2 months later, a diplomatic shuttle descended through the blue skies of Earth and landed in a city called San Francisco. Ambassador, as he was now called, stepped onto human soil for the first time. The sensation was strange. The gravity was slightly lighter than his. The air smelled different, filled with organic compounds he could not identify. The sun was yellow instead of blue, casting everything in warm golden light. Captain was waiting for him at the landing platform. He had traded his naval uniform for civilian clothes, but he still carried himself with the quiet confidence that had come to respect. "Welcome to Earth," Ambassador said, extending his hand. Grasped it without hesitation this time. "Thank you, Captain, or should I say thank you, Admiral?" Smiled. "The promotion was a surprise to me too. Apparently, not starting an interstellar war is considered good leadership." They walked together through the city, had seen images of human civilization in the briefings, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The streets were filled with humans of all ages, moving in every direction, talking and laughing and arguing. Buildings rose toward the sky in styles that ranged from ancient to impossibly modern. Music played from open windows. The smell of cooking food drifted from restaurants and street vendors. It was chaos, beautiful, vibrant, impossible chaos. "How do you function like this?" asked, overwhelmed by the sensory input. "There is no order, no structure. Everyone is just doing whatever they want." Laughed. "That is democracy for you. Everyone gets to make their own choices, for better or worse. It should not work. And yet it does, mostly." They visited a museum that displayed human history, walked through halls filled with artifacts from every era, from stone tools to spacecraft. He saw paintings that depicted wars and peaces, tragedies and triumphs. He read descriptions of leaders who had saved their people and leaders who had destroyed them. "You hide nothing," he observed. "Your failures are displayed as prominently as your victories." "We believe in learning from our mistakes," said. "If we forget the bad things we have done, we might do them again." They visited a university where young humans studied science and art and philosophy, spoke with students who asked him questions about culture, about the Empire's history, about life on other worlds. Their curiosity was endless. They wanted to know everything about everything. "In our civilization," told them, "knowledge is controlled. Only those who have proven themselves worthy are allowed access to advanced information. We believe it is safer that way." A young woman with red hair raised her hand. "But how do you discover new things if you limit who can learn?" Had no answer for that. They visited a sports stadium where humans gathered by the thousands to watch other humans compete in physical contests. The crowd cheered and shouted, expressing emotions that ranged from joy to despair depending on how the competition was going. "This is entertainment?" asked. "This is passion," corrected. "We love to compete. Against each other, against nature, against ourselves. It drives us to be better." As the sun began to set, led to a balcony overlooking the city. The sky was turning orange and pink, colors that did not exist on the. Below them, the city was coming alive with artificial lights that turned the streets into rivers of brightness. "What do you think of us now?" asked. Considered the question carefully. He had spent 2 months studying humanity. He had read their literature, watched their entertainment, analyzed their technology. He had tried to understand how a species so chaotic and contradictory could have achieved what they had achieved. "The Empire feared you," he finally said. "When I first saw your ship, when I realized what your weapons could do, I was afraid. I thought you were a threat that needed to be eliminated. And now I understand that we were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons I thought." Raised an eyebrow, explain. Gestured at the city below. "It is not your weapons or your technology that makes you dangerous. It is your nature. In 12,000 years, my people built an empire. We conquered worlds and accumulated power and believed we were the greatest civilization in the galaxy." He turned to look at directly. "In 200 years, you built something far more powerful. You built a species that refuses to accept limits. Every time the universe tells you that something is impossible, you find a way to do it anyway. Every time you face destruction, you come back stronger." "We are stubborn that way," admitted. "You are terrifying that way," corrected. "And also magnificent. My people have become comfortable. We stopped pushing ourselves centuries ago because we believed we had achieved perfection. But perfection is a trap. It makes you weak." He looked back at the sunset. "Humanity will never be perfect. You are too messy, too contradictory, too driven by emotions. But that means you will never stop growing. In another 1,000 years, the empire might look exactly as it does today. But humanity, I cannot even imagine what you will become." Was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small flask. "I brought something special for this occasion. It is called whiskey. It is like coffee but stronger." He poured 2 small glasses and handed one to the future, said, raising his glass, "Whatever it brings." Raised his glass in response. The liquid burned his throat in a way that was strangely pleasant. "To the future," he agreed, "and to the species that will shape it." Below them, the city of San Francisco glittered with a million lights. Ships rose toward orbit, carrying explorers and dreamers toward the stars. And somewhere in the vastness of space, 2 civilizations that had almost gone to war were taking their first steps toward something better. It was not perfect. It was never going to be perfect. But for humanity, that was exactly the point.